Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for the launch of Gabby Gilliam's book, No Ocean Spit Me Out. We're very excited that this book is coming out. And we have two other readers in addition to Gabby Gilliam. We have Alan Bern, who is another member of Old Scratch Press, and Robert Fleming, also a member of Old Scratch Press. Robert is really a large part of why we survive as a group, because he keeps us on track and he keeps coming back over and over again with minutes from the meetings and things like that. So we're very appreciative of Robert. He is a visual poet from Lewis, Delaware. His books are White Noir and Conway in 4-in-1 number 4. He is a founding contributing editor of Old Scratch Press and an editor of the online magazine Instant Noodles. He has won the 2022 San Gabriel Valley California Broadside, the 2021 Best of Mad Swirl Poetry. He was nominated as the 2023 Blood Rag Poet of the Year. His Delaware Press awards include a 3rd place and 3 honorable mentions. He's had 2 push carts and 2 Best of the Net, and he is going to share from White Noir and 3 future books that he's working on: Manscape, Self-Endangered Species, and Beyond the Runway.
Good evening. I'm Robert Fleming, a visual poet from Lewis, Delaware, and I'm grateful to be part of Old Scratch Press and that Gabby invited me as one of her colleagues to support her. And I'm going to share through the share screen. I'm sharing this first piece as a tribute to Dianne, who is our editor-in-chief, who always teaches me that promotion is half is to promote yourself, who you are as a person, and half your work. So this is the first visual poem I ever wrote. It was at age 11 in 1974. My first language was French, and this was from my French notebook. And recently, I translated it into English. I'll read it in both languages. Grand, c'est assez marin, méchant, intelligent, aime manger beaucoup, poisson pour traîner, baleine. Big crustacean marine, mean, intelligent, likes to eat a lot, trainable fish, whale. And that was my voice when I was 11 years old. And when I was 59 years old, I published a visual poetry book called White Noir. And this was the cover. I'm grateful for David Jovanovich, who is here tonight. He helped change the font of the text to make the text appear more eerie, which I like. My first piece is inspired by a visual artist, Salvador Dali. His work is called The Persistence of Memory, and it features time and watches. This was one of my pieces from White Noir. The other thing which this piece is building on is concrete poetry, where the primary object in the poem is the shape of the poem. So the primary shape in this poem is the face of a watch. And if you look on the outside of the circle, you have all of the time zones on planet Earth. And then you go inside of the circle and you have all of the numbers on a watch. The next interior circle are all the parts of a watch, like the band, the tick, the case, the crown, and at the center is a poem that I wrote using the word time and using the letters in time, all of the words that you could create from that. Tim emits a mit from tea. Tim's ties his tie. Tim I a Tim. It's tea time for Tim. Tim, EMTs. And the piece is called Divide Time. My next piece is an example of the way that I have moved visual poetry forward. The first element is that when you typically look at the page in written text, the back of the page is white. Here I have made the back of the page black and the text white. This poem is a mirror poem, and there are two things which I have done which was new in the mirror poem. If you look at the right column, the last letter in the right column is right justified, and then the letter which is further right justified, the text goes from right to left, which is which is the way the Hebrew language is written, not the English language. So I'll now read it. Return to the garden. Apple trees are under the sky, but need a roof. Eve needs sky. Pear trees are soiled, but need a linoleum floor. Adam needs soil. Cherry trees are an open space, but needs walls. Jack needs open space. Banana trees have sap, but need blood. Jill needs sap. Move the orchard inside the house. Return all humans under the sky. And I'm going to share some candidates I have for future books. The first one is called Manscape. One of the key things that is a success for a writer is to write what you know. I am a man, and I know what that is. So that's why I've chosen a book. Here is a poem which I will include in the book. It's called Man Rage. Getting there is what matters most to men. Not just in a truck, but getting off the highway to a sex stop, to text. How gray are the tire blowout remains in the emergency kill lane? If the road's rest stops would be better rest for men, then men resting off-road would eat hosted ho-hos and ding-dongs, as sugar would ride down men's throats to esophagus to stomach. Men would drink Dixie cup beer shots, and for $1, men would hear, "You're the smartest." And for $2, men would hear, "You're always right." This is another candidate book that I'm thinking about doing. It's called Self-Endangered Species. And this is the image for the cover. And as a graphic artist, I have to say, one of the most difficult objects to manipulate is string or rope. I wouldn't advise it. This would be the lead poem in the book, The History of One Self-Endangered Species. caving you with a wood club, burping brisk milk in the pub, marching of the male monarchs, taking the sweat room with farts, rising male republic, silencing spit in public, curving a vertebrae, planting a field, landing bile soldiers, do not yield, cycling of the dictator mustache, sylvestering cat urine, suffering succotash, harvesting a field, riding a tractor, uranium with blood, a nuclear reactor, invading drive-in movie creatures from outer space, race to end the human race. And my last option for next book is called Beyond the Runway, which would have a transgender theme. This is one poem about gender. Boys wear blue, girls wear pink, men wear pants, women wear dresses. Boys and girls are not made by their maker. Jill will be Jack and Jack will be Jill. Trucks and dolls are toys. Blue and pink are colors. Thank you for letting me share some of my selections from White Noir and some of the future directions my work may go. And thank you for inviting me, Gabby.
Thank you very much. That was great, Robert. I really appreciate it. It's very different work. And I find it kind of interesting and inspiring to see what people are doing. Alan Bern was born in Berkeley, California, and has lived there most of his life. In the late 1960s, he attended an Italian high school in Napoli, where he lived with his family. This was a vitally important year in his life, a year when he first discovered and uncovered himself and fell in love with Napoli. Exploring his dreams of returning to Italia again and yet again, and suggestions of why he wants to return, why he must return to Italia, in poems, in translations and imitations of Italian poems, in stories, and all are going to be accompanied by his photos. Today, Alan will read from his book some of the poems and some of the translations and imitations for you to enjoy and travel with him back to Italia, especially to the magical, mysterious, magnificent South, to his beloved Napoli.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, David, for supporting Old Scratch Press. And thank you, Gabby, so much for inviting me to read today. This is going to be really fun. Viva Italia, viva Napoli. So I lived in Napoli with my family for a year as a teenager and went to an Italian high school, a technical high school in the Vomero on a hill above the coastal district of Napoli called Mergellina. This school was called at the time Il Liceo Tecnico e Commerciale e di Nicola in 1965 to 66, and I have never fully recovered from that amazing year of self-discovery. Yes, I fell in love with Napoli. Who wouldn't? It's one of the most beautiful cities in the known world. Vedi Napoli e poi mori, see Naples and die. The Neapolitans believe deeply in their own beauty and in the beauty of their most beautiful city. Vedi Napoli e poi mori, see Naples and die. Marco, more pie, more pizza pie. Stai inguaiato, the oven's not even hot. Way, blessed mother, Jesu Cristo, he's a know-nothing. Well, he does have idioms, and when the GI asks him how he's doing, he comes back with, Tengo a wallet, thank you. 2 long wallets ready to rupture. Sfacim, he says. He has sperm in his hand towel and doesn't know whether to put it. What a fucking bother. But in this mess of traffic here and there, cars on every sidewalk, He is a sprinting quail, as the good Napolitani say, enu bravo guaglione, a directed messenger carrying fresh fish fillets wrapped tightly in yesterday's news and running, slapping both feet, a lit cigarette on his lower lip. So moving from that poem, we're going to go more to central Italy, to a poem that I translated over 50 years ago. This is a sestina by Dante, written in 1296. And he wrote some poems that he called Rime per la Donna Pietra, rhymes for the woman of stone. And this one is called Al poco giorno e il gran cerchio d'ombra. So this is just in English, you're going to hear it. My English. Toward the short day's dark and the vast ring of shadow, I've come sadly into the whitening of the hills, there where my eyes can find no color in the grass. And yet my longing remains evergreen. It is fast rooted so in the hard stone, which speaks and hears as if it were a woman. In like fashion, this ever-new woman remains as hard as snow within a shadow, for she is not moved any more than stone by the sweet season that warms the foothills and returns them from white to April green, bringing a cover of flowers and of grass. When in her hair she set a garland of grass, she keeps from every mind every other woman. For in the mix, crisping yellow and the green are so lovely, love seeks out their shadow. Love, who has locked me in among the low hills, more tightly than hardened mortar padlocks stone. Her beauty has more power than a rare stone, and she gives wounds that cannot be healed by grass. For this I've fled over plains and over hills to venture and escape from such a woman. But from her light I cannot find a shadow, under knoll or wall or in the forest green. Just now I saw her dressed in the finest green, so fair she would have instilled in a stone the love I have even for her shadow. So I have wanted her in a fresh field of grass, as much in love as ever was any woman, and closed in all around by the highest hills. But well may rivers return to the hills before flames catch in this wood so wet and green as flame would catch in the heart of a fine woman for me. I, who would sleep willingly on stone all my days and wander feeding on grass, if only to see where her dress casts shadow. Whenever the hills cast the blackest shadow under summer green, this fair young woman hides it, as a man hides a stone in the grass. So this sestina is also part of a project, kind of an ongoing project of my friend, the printer and artist Robert Woods, and you can find that broadside as well as many other broadsides we've created for over 50 years at linesandfaces.com. So now we're going to jump forward over 500 years to perhaps the second greatest of all Italian poets, Giacomo Leopardi, and his most lauded poem, L'Infinito, The Infinite, that I translated around 6 years ago. First in Leopardi's Italian. L'infinito. Sempre caro mi fu quest'ermo cole e questa siepe che da tanta parte dall'ultimo orizzonte il guardo esclude. Ma sedendo e mirando interminati spazi di là, da quella e sovrumani silenzi e profondissima quiete, io nel pensier mi fingo, ove per poco il cor non si spaura. E come il vento odo stormir tra queste piante, io quello infinito silenzio a questa voce vo comparando. E mi sovvien l'eterno, e le morti stagione, e la presente e viva, e il suon di lei. Così tra questa immensità s'annega il pensier mio, il naufragarmi dolce in questo mare. The infinite. Always dear to me this solitary hill and this thicket that screens out so much of the view of the farthest horizon. But sitting and gazing out, I frame in my mind endless spaces beyond and silences that surpass anything human, and a deep stillness. There, for a single beat, the heart is not afraid. And as the wind comes murmuring among these plants, I begin to compare that infinite silence to this voice, and I recollect eternity and the dead seasons past and the present one alive before me, and her sound. So in this immensity, my thinking goes under and sinks, and the ship going down is sweet to me in this sea. I am entirely and fatally attracted not only to the south of Italia, but in great part through San Francesco d'Assisi, St. Francis of Assisi, to its more northern realms. Here's a short selection of poems from my book centering around that great saint, who even I, a purely Jewish and most secular writer, find most impressive. Hymn to San Francesco, who honored morning, even the darkest hour of the wolf. Now I hear his birds begin, and their songs mean light comes. Here I stretch over my scapula across the bed and drive back down to the dream I had in sleep. And this one based on the story of the Wolf of Gubbio, called The Wolf of Gubbio. Francesco, holding the paw of the great wolf of Gubbio, his nails sunk deep into your palm. This trust attracted you to pain and the joy within it. And here's the translation of this short poem, The Wolf of Gubbio, into Italian by my friend, the educator and poet Marco Rossi Doria, from whom we'll hear a little bit more later on. Il lupo di Gubbio. Francesco, tenendo la zampa del grande lupo di Gubbio, i suoi artigli affonderanno profondi nel tuo palmo. Questa fiducia ti attirò al dolore e alla gioia che ha dentro. In falling in love with San Francesco, of course, I had to visit and spend time at the Sacromonte di Orta, which is a setup of small chapels dedicated to San Francesco above the small lake Lago d'Orta, just north of Milano. Here is a poem of descending from that Sacromonte into the town of Orta San Giulio, where I was staying. Descent into Orta San Giulio from the Sacromonte di Orta. Winter trees bide, they gate Orta's Sacromonte pathway. Branches bared to pale bark lift death's face. Lean Francesco in stone overlooks, his stick crucifix held in cold air. A first step it takes many to sound out Francesco's words chiseled at Chapel 6. Go, dear ones, announce peace and penance, be patient, bless and thank everyone. Just up Viale Frate Vento, the avenue of Brother Wind. Though I falter in penance, peace mumbled beyond me. I walk back down a stony path with loosened heart, humming every one. And since I was in high school when I was in Naples, there was also love and sex. Here are 3 poems from that vantage as well. Our best move, we never wed. Please, I still want to call in my head, yes, you, your name, naked. We had our first time together right by the cool window, the littlest light hairs on your arms and cheeks. We saw down the ivied ravine, still dry in early winter. I'm in love with you still, oh, am I? In Liceo 59 years ago, your ear, you were the poetry I whispered when your soft palm fell onto the fabric of my pants between my legs. Not quite on purpose, I thought then. How you were arched in your chair, your breasts rising. I still want a French kiss. You wouldn't take it in you, my tongue, even while we entered each other, the little sounds we both made. You were 1 year younger, but now you've died first. Vittoria. On the street of the Vomero, my hands were so cold, I pulled on light gloves to hold your hands. Somehow yours were warm. You invited me in to study matematica. Once inside, instead, I pulled you to me and your eyes closed. Instead of kissing, we hugged, slipping on the couch covered with plastic. Your eyes began to roll, and you asked me to leave right then before your parents returned. And as we stood up, I pulled you to me once again. I have never felt another's body soften in that way, something once called swooning. Like softening eggplants, we touch. We are two softening eggplants, those large berries. What shining complexions. Sometimes, you whisper, I see our other colorings if our aubergine, our melanzana is cooked just so to keep that gorgeous tonal sheen. Is it dark? Black? I ask. You kiss me and say, no, it is night sky, deep azure, an undeniable purple, as when our friends cook it into the parmigiana. That savor sealed the evening for me. My crush on you was heated, sweet with salt, not sugar. That's how we met, I remember. A purple favor. Now, why haven't I recovered from Napoli after almost 60 years? My friend, the Neapolitan educator and poet Marco Rossi Doria, to whom my book is in part dedicated, wrote the following about my book, Dreams of the Return. For decades, I've asked myself, why in the world, after just 1 year in an Italian high school, has Alan Bern wanted again and again through his whole life to nourish his attachment to Napoli and to keep himself fully and kindly loyal to Italian? Now we are two old men, and I sometimes think that it is not Alan who has kept my Neapolitan places within him so richly, completely. Rather, it may be the other way around. It may be that this language full of music, Napoli, old and powerful, have decided to keep reaching out for Alan month after month, year after year, all the way across the Mediterranean and through Gibraltar, across the Atlantic Ocean, the Great Plains, the Rocky Mountains, the Sierras, to him in Berkeley. With admiration, I leave you with Marco's insightful mythological explanation, Napoli the Siren, and also this short story from my junior high years before my year in Napoli, and only remembered after I finished my book. After school and on weekends, I used to shoot pool with my friends Pete and Robert, and with Pete's older brother Johnny in their beautiful house in the Berkeley Hills. As we chalked up or stood around waiting for another to shoot, I specifically recall talking about Sophia Loren from Pozzuoli, a neighboring small town to Napoli. We all loved our Sophia, a most beautiful woman in the world, so we believed, and also a mother figure to all. How lucky was Marcello Mastroianni? Several of their 17 movies together took place in Napoli. Of course. Yes, I've actually been in love with Napoli since then, and I'm still in love with Sophia Loren, now over 88 years old. Thank you.
Gabby is a writer, an aspiring teacher, I think maybe not aspiring anymore, actually, and a mom. She lives in the DC metro area with her husband and her son, and she is one of our founding members of Old Scratch Press. Very glad to have Gabby on board. Her poetry and fiction has appeared online and in multiple anthologies, and she has 2 horror novels published, which is really cool as well. You can find her online at gabbygilliam.com. No Ocean Spit Me Out is her first chapbook, and we are very excited that we have her here today to read. So without further ado, congratulations, Gabby.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you everybody else for coming. I'm really excited to be sharing this collection with you. My copy is already very dog-eared and has a lot of sticky notes in it. But I figured that I would start with the first poem in the collection because it kind of introduces the area that my family is from. And the collection deals a lot with family and also being raised Catholic and just kind of figuring out where you fit within your family and faith dynamic. So the first poem I'm going to read is Visiting the North Country. I dream of the Adirondacks, rubbery brine of cheese curd chewed on the shores of Stillwater Reservoir, Krogan bologna on crackers, the unexpected tug on my line, yellow perch slick as memory, caught and released. All right, and the second poem I'm going to read is actually the first poem that I ever had published. It was published by the now defunct Chesapeake Reader, and it is about my grandmother. It's called Babka. Her kitchen smelled of peppers and Polish sausage. She stood over the stove, cooking an epic feast just to feed the four of us. Her rings glittered, reflecting the light from over the stove. Pressed slacks and silk blouse visible, even if her clothes were masked by an apron. Hair meticulously curled, sat perfectly atop her head, and the heels of her polished shoes clicked as she bustled about on the spotless linoleum floor. Now that time has caught her, she no longer makes kielbasa or sauerkraut. Her hands are idle and bare. Her knuckles, bent and disfigured, she can no longer wear her rings. Her face protected from the sun by a floppy straw hat, with a pink ribbon that flutters gracefully when caught by the wind, she kneels in her garden, her dirty, calloused hands easing a velvety purple iris into the ground. The next poem is also about my grandmother. This one first appeared in the literary magazine Superfruit, and it's called Just the Once. My grandmother's tree grew the tiniest apples, covered the driveway and part of the front walk with diminutive fruit, perfectly sized for my groping fingers. And I would ask my mother to let me eat one every time we went to visit. "You won't like it," my mother would say, which only made me want to try them even more. The day came when I found myself in the soft grass of my grandmother's yard with no mother to deny me. I plucked an apple, so petite, red skin, flecked with patches of green, brought it to expectant lips, took that first savory bite, and spit it into the grass, chucking the rest of the apple across the driveway for the birds to eat. My grandmother chuckled when I said her apples were gross. She agreed, told me she didn't care for crab apples either. The next poem is called First Communion. I expected a burst of happiness on my tongue, the tingle of salvation as transubstantiated flesh tickled its way down my throat, but only found the whisper of crisp robes and a stale wafer, which melted into paste and tasted nothing like peace. I would have coughed to clear it from my mouth or spit it out if Jesus hadn't been watching from his crucifix, open wounds oozing with forgiveness. The next poem is where the title of the chapbook comes from. And this poem is about my dad. It's comparing him to another very famous father, Zeus. It first appeared in Tofu Ink Arts Press, and it's called No Ocean Spit Me Out. You were born in a burst of sea foam, a pearl rising from sand, salt-kissed and beautiful. I was born in upstate New York. No, further north than that. Snow-kissed fingers and toes, never able to get warm. Your father wielded lightning, his fury immortal. My father wielded weed whackers and grill tongs, his anger dull sparks that failed to ignite, his love enduring beyond the limits of his mortality. Did Zeus ever tuck you in? Ignore the flashlight clutched beneath your sheets so you could read after lights out? Did he sing old gospel songs into the darkness while your eyelids grew heavy? Or did he only turn maidens into cows? The next poem was written during a summer of a lot of loss for our family, and it was after learning that a close family friend had passed away. And it's called Don't Tell Me It Will Pass. My molars ache from clenching my jaw, grinding bone against bone while I chew this fresh grief. They will lay your bones in North Carolina earth 2 days from now. I air out my funeral dress to rid it of the stale scent of the last death still clinging to its hem, ready to pack these feelings into my overnight bag. I spit shards of shattered tooth onto the shoulder as I drive. And I just realized that the poems are taking like a little bit of a dark turn. This one is I wrote after we lost my dad. It first appeared in the poetry box, and it's called My Apologies, Dad. The marbled stumps of graves poke out of overgrown grass, an army of gray thumbs in perfect, steadfast formation. We didn't open the windows or stop the clocks when you died. I hold my breath until we pass the final row to avoid catching my death or angering an envious spirit with my functional lungs, my beating heart, my tightly pressed lips. I just learned you're supposed to tuck thumbs into fists while passing a cemetery to protect your parents. I never knew. So many ways I failed to protect you. The next poem first appeared in Holiday Cafe, and it's called Is My Tree Dying or Dead? I try to channel the memory of my ancestors, search with stunted roots in soil too virgin to be fertile. I cannot drink their wisdom, scrape only the surface of their histories while time burns our tenuous connection, severs me from the ancient power of past generations, a lone branch on a barren family tree. The next poem was actually inspired from an online ekphrastic poetry group that I belong to, and I know that Laurel is here somewhere. Laurel Benjamin, thank you for this. It was inspired by a picture of artwork that she posted. Not all venom will kill you. I carry my ancestors close to my skin, thrumming through capillaries, clogging my pores, phantom eyes tracking every misstep, their silent judgment captured in disapproving stares, our joint history a chronicle of my mistakes, each memory a scorpion sting. This poem is called Running Free. I am wild strawberries, explosion of juice on tongue, barefoot on gravel, feet calloused and sure, sap-stained palms and racing to the highest limb, ghost in the graveyard beneath a full summer moon, the lemony tartness of crabgrass blossoms, syrupy sweetness licked from honeysuckle, the echo of summer freedom still ringing in my bones. All right, and I'm going to read one more. This is the final poem in the collection. I wrote this poem during the Tupelo Press's 3030 project, and then it later appeared as part of the Poetic License exhibit at the Art Society of Kingston. An artist chose my poem, and they created a piece of art inspired by my poem, and they hung together at the Art Society of Kingston for the month of August. And this poem is called I Will Celebrate Each Revolution. I could devour this morning, belly full of dew-kissed grass, birdsong nesting gently in my throat, my breath fragrant with possibility, taste of dawn brilliant on my tongue. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for coming to celebrate the launch of No Ocean Spit Me Out. I really appreciate you all coming to hear us read tonight.
That was such beautiful poetry. Thank you, Gabby, very much for working with Old Scratch Press and for letting us publish your book. I think it's a lovely book.